In a courtroom meant to uphold justice, a black man stood before a judge whose words dripped with contempt, her insults slicing through the air like a blade. 7 minutes later, the gavel of fate would fall, not on him, but on her, as he turned the tables in a way no one saw coming. On a humid morning in August 2023, Marcus Thompson, a 38-year-old construction worker from Atlanta, stepped into courtroom 4B of the Fulton County Superior Court. He was there for a minor traffic violation, a speeding ticket he'd received while rushing to pick up his daughter from school. Marcus was no stranger to courtrooms. He'd been in and out for small matters over the years, mostly resolved with a fine or a warning. But this time felt different. The air was thick with tension as he adjusted his tie, his palms slightly sweaty, though he told himself it was just the heat. The presiding judge, Evelyn Harper, was known in legal circles for her sharp tongue and rigid demeanor. At 62, she'd spent 3 decades on the bench, her reputation a mix of respect for her legal acumen and whispers about her biases. Her silver hair was pulled tightly into a bun, and her piercing blue eyes scanned the room with an authority that made even seasoned attorneys sit up straighter. Marcus, standing at the defendant's table, felt her gaze settle on him like a weight. The clerk called Marcus's case, and he stepped forward, his shoulders squared. He'd prepared for this moment, ready to explain the circumstances of his ticket and pay whatever fine was necessary. But before he could speak, Judge Harper leaned forward, her voice cutting through the hum of the courtroom. "So, Mr. Thompson," she began, her tone laced with something sharper than professionalism, "another one of you speeding through my city, huh? I suppose you thought you could just charm your way out of this one?" Marcus blinked, caught off guard. The courtroom went quiet, the murmurs of other defendants and attorneys fading. He opened his mouth to respond, but Harper didn't give him the chance. "Don't bother," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "I've seen your type before. Always in a rush, always an excuse. You people never learn, do you?" The words, "you people," hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. He'd faced prejudice before, on job sites, in stores, even from police officers during routine stops. But in a courtroom, from a judge? It was a new kind of sting. He glanced at his public defender, a young woman named Sarah Patel, who looked equally stunned but quickly scribbled something on her notepad. "Excuse me, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice steady but firm. "I'd like to explain." "I don't need your explanations," Harper interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "I've got a docket full of cases, and I'm not here to listen to stories. You were clocked at 15 miles over the limit. That's reckless driving in my book, especially in a school zone. You're lucky no one got hurt." Marcus's heart pounded. He hadn't been in a school zone. The ticket clearly stated it was on a highway. He tried again. "Your Honor, the ticket says." "Are you arguing with me?" Harper snapped, her voice rising. "You think you know the law better than I do? Typical. Always thinking you're above the rules." The courtroom stirred. A few defendants exchanged glances, and an older woman in the gallery whispered something to her neighbor. Sarah Patel stood up, her voice shaking slightly. "Your Honor, I believe my client is trying to clarify a detail about the location of the violation. The ticket indicates." "Ms. Patel," Harper cut her off, "if you can't control your client, I'll hold you both in contempt. Sit down." Sarah hesitated, then sat, her face flushed. Marcus stood alone, his hands clasped in front of him, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room. He wanted to speak, to challenge the judge's assumptions, but he knew better. He'd learned long ago that pushing back too hard could make things worse. Still, the injustice burned in his chest. Harper leaned back in her chair, her lips curling into a faint smirk. "You're fined $500 and you'll attend a defensive driving course. Next time, Mr. Thompson, try following the law instead of making excuses. Or better yet, stay out of my courtroom." Marcus nodded curtly, his face a mask of restraint. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, though the words tasted bitter. He turned to leave, but Harper wasn't done. "And Mr. Thompson," she called after him, her voice dripping with condescension, "maybe invest in a watch so you're not always running late. It might keep you out of trouble." A few people in the gallery chuckled nervously, but most stayed silent. Marcus paused, his back to the judge, his fists clenching briefly before he relaxed them. He walked out of the courtroom, his head held high, but inside, he was seething. He didn't go far. Just outside the courtroom, he leaned against the wall, taking a moment to breathe. Sarah joined him, her expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," she said quietly. I've never seen her like that. I'm going to file a complaint with the Judicial Oversight Committee." Her comments were completely out of line. Marcus shook his head but nodded. "Appreciate it, Sarah. But you know how these things go. She'll probably untouchable." Sarah frowned. "Maybe. But we have to try." There were witnesses. People heard what she said. Marcus didn't respond. He'd heard promises like that before, people saying they'd fight the system, only for nothing to change. He glanced at his watch, realizing he needed to get back to work. But before he turned to leave, a man in a dark suit approached him. He was in his late 50s, with a badge clipped to his belt and a U.S. Marshal. "Mr. Thompson?" the Marshal asked, his tone professional but urgent. "Yeah," Marcus said, wary. "What's this about?" The Marshal lowered his voice. "I need you to come with me. It's regarding an active investigation." Marcus's stomach dropped. An investigation? Was this about to the ticket or something else? He glanced at Sarah, who looked as confused but nodded encouragingly. "Go," she said. "I'll follow up on your case. Call me if you need anything." Marcus followed the Marshal down a side hallway, his mind racing. They entered a small office tucked away in the courthouse, where two other marshals waited. One of them, a woman with a sharp jawline and a tablet in hand, spoke first. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Deputy Marshal Claire Evans. We're with the U.S. Marshal Service, Judicial Security Division. We've been monitoring certain activities in this courthouse, and we need your help." Marcus frowned. "My help? For what?" Evans exchanged a glance with her colleagues before continuing. "We've been investigating Judge Evelyn Harper for months now. There's evidence suggesting she's involved in misconduct, including abuse of power and potential ties to a local real estate scheme that's been targeting minority communities. Her behavior in court just now, her comments to you, may to be part of a pattern we're trying to establish." Marcus leaned back, processing. "You're saying she's crooked?" "We're saying we have reason to believe she's compromised," Evans said carefully. "But we need concrete evidence to move forward. That's where you come in." Marcus almost laughed, but the seriousness in her eyes stopped him. "Me? I'm just a guy with a speeding ticket. How am I supposed to help you take down a judge?" The third marshal, a man who introduced himself as Deputy Marshal James Carter, spoke up. "You're more than that, mister. We've checked your background. You've got no criminal record, you're a community volunteer, and you've been a foreman on construction sites. You know how to stay calm under pressure, and you've just demonstrated that in there. Plus, you've now got a first-hand experience of Harper's behavior. We need someone credible, someone who can wear a wire." Marcus's eyes widened. "A wire? You want me to go back in there and what? Bait her?" "Not bait," Evans said. "Engage. We've got a hearing scheduled in her chambers in 7 minutes, a follow-up on a case where she's suspected of pushing a settlement that benefits her associates. If you can get her talking, we might catch her slipping up. We'll be listening the whole time, and we'll have a team ready to act if anything goes wrong." Marcus ran a hand over his face, his mind spinning. 7 minutes ago, he'd been just trying to pay a fine and leave. Now he was being asked to walk back into the lion's den with a wire taped to his chest. He thought of his daughter, waiting for him at home. He thought of Harper's smirk, her words echoing, "You people never learn." He thought of all the times he'd swallowed his anger because he had no other choice. "What's the risk?" he asked. Carter answered. "Minimal but real. If she suspects anything, she could try to retaliate, maybe trump up a charge or worse. But we'll have eyes on you, and we're ready to pull you out. If we get what we need, she won't have a chance to come after anyone." Marcus took a long breath. "And if I say no?" "Then you walk away," Evans said. "No pressure. But this might be the best shot we've got to stop her from hurting more people." Marcus stared at the floor, weighing his options. He didn't know these marshals anything. He didn't know the system anything, not after what he'd just endured. But the thought of Harper sitting on that bench, wielding her power like a club, made his blood boil. He thought of others who might stand where he'd stood, facing her venom without a way to fight back. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice low but resolute. Evans nodded, wasting no time. She handed him a small device, barely larger than a button, and explained how it would transmit audio. Carter taped it carefully to his chest, under his shirt, while Evans briefed him on the plan. They'd escort him to Harper's chambers under the pretense of a clerical error with his case file, giving him a chance to engage her. The hearing was about a property dispute tied to the real estate scheme, and Harper was expected to push for a quick settlement. If he could steer the conversation toward her motives, they might catch her implicating herself. 7 minutes later, Marcus stood outside Harper's chambers, flanked by a marshal posing as a court officer. His heart pounded, but he kept his face neutral. The door opened, and Harper looked up from her desk, her expression shifting from annoyance to surprise. "Mr. Thompson?" she said, her voice tinged with suspicion. "What is this?" "Your Honor," the marshal said smoothly. "There's a discrepancy with the case file." Mr. Thompson was asked to clarify a point before the next hearing. Harper sighed dramatically, gesturing for Marcus to sit. "Make it quick," she said. "I've got actual important business to attend to." Marcus sat, his hands resting on his knees, the wire of faint pressure against his skin. He glanced around the room, shelves lined with legal texts, a framed degree on the wall, a photo of Harper shaking hands with a smiling man in a suit. He recognized the man vaguely from local news, someone tied to property development. "I'm sorry for the trouble, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice calm. "I just want to make sure everything's square with my case. I don't want any loose ends, especially since you mentioned the school zone. I double-checked, and the ticket says it was on I-75, not a school zone." Harper's eyes narrowed slightly, but she waved a hand dismissively. "A technicality. The officer's report is what matters, and I trust their judgment over, well, let's say, less reliable accounts." Marcus nodded, as if accepting her explanation. "I understand. You've got to keep things moving, right? Like with that property case you're hearing today. Sounds like a big one." Harper paused, her pen hovering over a document. "What do you know about that?" "Not much," Marcus said, leaning back slightly, his tone conversational. "Just overheard some talk about a land deal, something about fast settlements to clear way for new projects. Seems like you're making sure it goes smoothly." Harper's expression tightened, but she leaned forward, her voice lowering. "You're observant, Mr. Thompson. Maybe too observant. That case is a routine matter, and I'm ensuring it's resolved efficiently. Some people don't like progress, but this city needs it." "Progress," Marcus said, nodding. "Like those new condos downtown? I hear they're pushing folks out of their neighborhoods to make room. Must be tough to balance that kind of thing from the bench." Harper's eyes flashed with something, anger, maybe, or calculation. "You're out of your depth, Mr. Thompson. Those decisions are above your pay grade. I do what's necessary to keep this city from turning into a slum." Marcus kept his face neutral, though his pulse quickened. "Fair enough. Just seems like some folks are making a lot of money, while others lose everything. I guess that's how it works when you've got power." Harper leaned closer, her voice a near whisper now. "You think you're clever, don't you? Let me tell you something. People like you don't get to question people like me. I've spent years building this system, and I'm not about to let some transient with a speeding ticket undermine it. That land deal? It's happening, and it'll make this city better, whether you like it or not. My associates have made sure of that." Marcus's heart raced, but he didn't flinch. He'd heard enough. He glanced at the marshal, who gave a subtle nod. "I hear you, Your Honor," he said, standing. "I'll let you get back to your work." Harper smirked, turning back to her papers. "Smartest thing you've done all day." But as Marcus reached the door, it swung open. Deputy Marshal Evans stepped inside, flanked by 2 more marshals. Harper's head snapped up, her face draining of color. "Evelyn Harper," Evans said, her voice steady, "you're under arrest for judicial misconduct. abuse of power, and conspiracy to commit bribery in connection with the Fulton Realty scheme. Harper shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the wall. "What is this? You can't. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are," Evans said, producing a warrant. "And we've got everything you just said on record, thanks to Mr. Thompson." Harper's eyes darted to Marcus, her expression a mix of shock and fury. You set me up?" Marcus met her gaze, his voice calm but unyielding. "I'm just a citizen, Your Honor, doing what's right." The marshals moved forward, cuffing Harper as she sputtered protests. The room buzzed with activity as they began collecting documents from her desk. Marcus stepped back, his chest tight with a mix of relief and disbelief. He'd done it. She'd gone too far, and now she was facing the consequences. As Harper was led out of the chambers, her hands cuffed behind her, she glared at Marcus one last time. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. "You're nothing." Marcus didn't respond. He just watched as she was escorted down the hallway, her voice fading into the distance. Deputy Marshal Evans approached him, her expression one of respect. "You did good, Marcus," she said. "That took a lot of guts. We've got enough to make this stick, and your testimony will seal it." Marcus nodded, but his thoughts were already elsewhere, on his daughter, on the people Harper had hurt, on the weight of what had just happened. "What happens to her now?" he asked. "She'll face charges," Evans said. "And with the evidence we've got, she's looking at serious time. The real work's just starting, though, dismantling her network, making sure her associates don't slip through the cracks." Marcus exhaled, the adrenaline finally fading. "And me? What do I do?" Evans smiled faintly. "You go home, Mr. Thompson. You've done your part." He left the courthouse that day, the sun still high in the air, the sky. The weight of the morning lingered, but so did a sense of vindication. He'd stood up, not just for himself, but for everyone who'd faced Harper's venom and walked away powerless. The system wasn't perfect, and he knew one arrest wouldn't fix it. But for 7 minutes, in that room, he'd turned the tables. And that was something no one could take away.